but you made it. That's the
Yeah,
most important
yeah,
thing.
yeah. It's so good to
Everybody,
see you.
it's so good to see you as well. Everybody say hello to my friend, Dila Vance.
How are you?
We go back how many years?
Oh my God, the 80s.
Yes. You remember? I'm gonna give y'all a little backstory on how we met. It was thank all in part to Troy Johnson. Troy Johnson was a recording artist that was on the Kalista label. He was being
Kalista,
produced
yeah.
by he was being produced by Leon Silvers, and
And
for
me.
old and you.
Yeah, I was one of the producers.
Okay, on his first album, on that first
Yeah.
album.
What
Okay,
happened was I did one of the filler tracks on the album, but he
okay.
and I we had met long before he got that deal, and he was trying to get me to be on his next record to produce some stuff, and I ended up getting signed to the label as well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So it just all worked out. So what happened was I went to Calista to do an interview with Leon, like whatever happened to the Silvers kind of thing. And
Right.
I'm telling y'all how, and Raphael, my friend Raphael Baker is on here, and he was the editor in chief of a publication called Rags to Riches magazine. So he'll appreciate this story. So I went to do an interview with Leon Silvers, like I said, at Calista. And everything he was telling, I was so green. I was so green. And he kept telling me everything was off the record. He would give me a little bits and pieces and off the record, but off the record. And me on my silly self is like, well, he's telling me everything is off the record. So therefore, I can't do this story. So because I mean, like I said, I'm green, I'm new to California and everything. So out walks this light skinned dude with this hair, this blonde, brownish hair,
Correct. Yeah.
with a look. And Jade, you appreciate this. He had a hi Lino, he had a um chow, a little chow, and I remember the chow's name was Bear. And I said, "Well, Jade would appreciate it is because Jade has three chow dogs." So he walks out. Leon introduces us, telling me that he's his person on the label. So I eventually came back and did an interview with Troy, and then what happened? Oh, K-Day happened. You guys were doing that rap and roll. Remember that?
Yeah.
And we went to, was it Dorsey High School or Hamilton High School? Do you
I can't
remember?
remember. I just remember it was a high school.
It was a high school. And it was you, Troy, and a little dance troupe called Shampoo, Press, and Curl. I remember that.
Wow, you remember all of
Yes.
that?
And it was K-Day's rap and roll. So
Yeah.
that's how Dila Vance and I met. And from that whole shenanigans of that day, we became friends. So here we
Yeah.
are,
Oh,
um,
years later.
years later.
Yeah.
So you want to tell the people about you? Tell them your biography and everything that you have been doing. I mean,
Wow.
guys, you guys are going to really be impressed because he has a very good resume.
Well, to start off, like as we were talking about the Calista label, at the time when I was signed there, I had worked on my solo album. Uh, I was supposed to do a song on Keith Washington,
Mm.
but the song that he wanted was a song off my album, and I didn't want to give him that song. But he ended up writing his hit off of my song,
Oh, wow.
"Kissing You." He wrote it off of one of my songs, and I was like, "Well, that was
What?
a great idea since he couldn't have my song."
Right.
But I ended up working with Leon Silvers that year to help produce Evelyn Champagne King,
Mm-hmm.
which was like a New Jack Swing record. And this was before Teddy Riley, so people didn't even know that me and Leon
Yeah.
were actually the co-fathers of New Jack Swing. We had a record called Flirt that we did on Evelyn Champagne King, and
Yeah.
another
I
song
remember
called
that
Safe and
song.
Sound. And Safe and Sound, I don't think got released, but Flirt came out.
Yeah.
And that was actually the intro to New Jack Swing because I was trying some new styles. I was pretty much a funkster. I was from the Prince Parliament kind of vibe. And
Mm-hmm.
I scared everybody. So I said, well, let me try to come up with something that's a little more commercial for these guys since I was freaking them out at the label. So I was experimenting with some drums, and I came up with some drum patterns that I was hearing from your town, DC. I was listening
Yeah.
to Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers and a couple other guys that
Mm-hmm.
was just coming up that was hot.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember trying this drum beat out on a song, and everybody was like, "What is that?" I said, "I don't know what to call it, but I'm gonna come up with a new sound for it." And that was in 1986, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was Leon and I worked so well together on that record. He asked me to come do Atlantic Star with him and a couple other artists. So we produced maybe 4 or 5 artists together at that time. And as our relationship grew, my notoriety started coming around through other people. A couple years later, I had an artist named Letitia, and she was
Mm-hmm.
signed to an independent label out of Atlanta. And I was working with a very incredibly talented guy named John Barnes, who is still my hero to this day. This guy was a guy that was responsible for Michael Jackson's hits. He was working on the Thriller album, As Quiet as It's Kept. He was all responsible for Captain EO. He was responsible for We Are the World, all these different big records that he was doing on Michael, the whole Bad album.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy was so incredible to me. I was like just trying to soak up everything I could. But they called me and asked me to play keyboards on this girl's record. So I came in to do that. And what turned out was as the record got finished, they kept saying, well, you got the youngest ears in the room. Help us pick a single. And they had some great records, but to me they sounded like, just album cuts. I didn't hear a single. So
Mm-hmm.
they got mad. Of course, they said, okay, well, you go write one. So I went home that night and wrote a single and came back the next day. And they thought I had the song in my archives because it was already ready to roll when I got back. And they were like, well, how did you write this last night? I said, well, you said come up with something, so I did. And the song was Move On You. And it became my first top 40 hit.
Oh,
And
wow.
the song was her top 40 hit, and it also got her a deal on Motown.
Wow.
So
So you are like Motown, because for those of you who don't know, who's watching this, Calista, it was a subsidiary of Motown. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
yeah, Motown, it was a subsidiary of Motown, BMG, and a couple other, RCA, and a couple other companies that were just, trying to figure out what to do. We had so many artists on that label.
Mm-hmm.
We had Keith Washington, Troy Johnson. We had a girl named Luscious Dame.
I
Had an
remember
incredible guy
Luscious
named
Dame. I
Yeah,
remember
had an
Luscious
incredible
Dame.
guy named Jack. A guy named Jack Jack, another incredible musician and singer and writer. And then myself, and then there was a couple jazz artists on it. There was a guy named Ron Artis
Mm-hmm.
and a couple other people that were incredibly talented. The whole roster was like monsters. Then we had
Wow.
Leon Silvers as a producer, myself as a producer. We had Norman Whitfield Jr. as a producer. We had all
Yes.
these incredible talents. It was like amazing. And that was the start. And mind you, that was the mid 80s. So, like I said, my thing was I was all over the place. I was learning my sound actually from Leon, the Calloway Brothers, which is Midnight Star. And I
Right.
was learning from Jam and Lewis because Jam and Lewis used to be around me all the time. And I would just try to soak up everything I could from those brothers. So I found my niche. And when my sound started getting adapted, Move On You, like I said, was my first top 40 hit in the 80s. And that started my whole movement to the New Jack kind of thing and some funk stuff and some other things. But I was a heavy ballad writer, and people didn't know I wrote better slow songs than I wrote up tempo. So I was writing this one song, and the guys asked me, well, she needs one more song, for her album. And I said, well, I got this ballad I'm working on, but I don't think she can sing it, because it's a little different. And what ended up happening was I gave her a shot, and the song worked out really well. She did a really good job on it. And the song was called Only You Can Get Me Off.
Oh, wow.
The title scared everybody on the radio. They were like, well, what are they talking about on there?
Yeah, because
But
today it would get played, but back then it was like, I don't
yeah,
know.
I was a little ahead of my time. Prince messed me up.
Yeah, he did. He messed everybody up.
He messed me up. So I ended up writing some real provocative songs. They weren't as edgy as his stuff because I kept mine commercially clean. I didn't want to offend people on the radio, so I give you suggestive titles, but I kept it clean. So it was different. But that song sparked a whole new sound in ballads.
Okay.
And after Teddy Riley heard that song, he came up with his "Let's Chill" many years later off of that
Right.
song. Oh, I
Right.
see where you guys are going. Y'all vibing on me. Okay. What happened was 1988, I want to say. I sat down with my uncle Art Madison, who's an incredible vocalist.
And
Oh
we
my God.
may or may not be related.
I
That's the
think we
other
are
thing.
though.
We might be related.
I think we are though. But the thing is with Art, he has that Marvin Gaye flavor, and he is one of the most incredible singers. I mean, you don't get a guy who has so much range. He can sing low. He can sing really high falsetto. He's an incredible writer and arranger. And he and I used to come up with demos since we were kids. I was 16 when he and I started writing together.
Mm-hmm.
And we came up with a ballad called Let It Flow. And Let It Flow was so beautiful. This was a song we did on Atlantic Records, and you can find
Okay.
it. It's actually on a lot of the platforms. I found it on YouTube and a few other places that they're
Okay.
playing the original version. But a few years later, him and Jay King went back in the studio and reproduced it because Atlantic didn't promote it for some reason. So they went back in the studio and tried to recreate the vibe. But they did a nice polished version of it, but it wasn't like the original we had. The original we had was incredible. So somebody just sent me, what is your inspiration when you write? I have to go off of vibe
That's
because
Jade. Her name is Jade, and you should follow her platform. She has a dope platform.
okay, well, Jade, thank you for the question too. My inspiration for writing is really weird. I got to tell you, because when I was a kid, I played different instruments. I played bass guitar, I played keyboards, I played guitar and drums. Drums was my first instrument. But as a keyboard player, I listen for chords that move the spirit. And when I'm writing, I usually vibe off of um, a catalog of people that opened the way for me, like the Moments. Let me see, who else was Stevie Wonder. There was a lot of people that had like the beautiful chord changes. I used to go crazy over pretty chord changes, and I'm a string freak, so I get inspired by mood. I'd have to say moody chords and moody stuff that makes me come up with my inspirations. But I'm a funk fan. Like I told you guys, I'm a funkster. I come from that Parliament Funkadelic mentality. I got issues. So
Those are good issues. That's a good issue to have. Trust me, that's a good issue to have, because you hear a P-Funk song, you just like, yee. So you mentioned earlier that you drew inspiration from go-go music, and which has become, and I don't understand why it wasn't and people didn't realize it, but has become the official sound of Washington, D.C.
yeah, you guys had it
So
going.
yes, I mean, people that people were like surprised. Well, wasn't it always? But it's officially on record, the
Uh-huh.
official sound of Washington, D.C.
And if they
So
ever try to tell you different, I'll back you up, because
thank you,
that's where I got my drum beats. I
my
heard something from
brother.
Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers that put me on another page, that Bustin' Loose song, and then I heard this other song, and then EU came to town and did a show, and I was floored. Them brothers was putting it down, and I said, you know what? I'm taking those drum beats and I'm gonna come up with a sound. And one of the songs
Why
I did
not?
on my
Everybody else did.
well, this is the thing. One of the songs I put on my 1986 album was a song called "Ain't Nobody Like Her Body," and I used one of my first go-go beats on that, which happened to be the same beat as Bobby Brown's "Don't Be Cruel," and
Wow.
that's on my album. Check this out, you guys. The album that I released in 1990 on Epic Records has songs from my 1986 album that never got released. So people don't know. They were talking about, oh, you sound like Teddy Riley. I wonder, how do I sound like a
Ah,
brother who heard my music first?
right. Who
How do I sound
who
like a brother
who
who heard my music
who
first?
did it first? You
Right. No,
did it first.
it wasn't a competition thing for me.
Right.
Teddy
I
Riley
get
is
it.
the
I get
most
it.
incredible people I've ever listened to.
Hmm.
I've actually gotten ideas from the brother. He's incredibly talented.
Yes,
And
he is.
we have much respect for one another. I love that brother dearly, and he helped me find my other niche in, changing my where I was going to, because I would hear stuff from him and get inspired. And I know he got inspired by a couple of my joints because I heard a couple of my joints on Michael, and I said, "Oh, okay, I ain't mad at you, but he's a bad dude. He knows how to get his sources." I'm like, okay. But
Yeah.
what happened was Teddy Riley ended up having a baby by one of my artists. So that's why I
Uh-oh.
said, "Oh, that's where he's hearing my stuff at."
We
Okay,
not
I said,
saying no names,
I'm
but
not
you
gonna
know,
say
you and
that.
I can talk. You and I can talk. We can talk later. We can talk
I
later
said, okay,
about
okay.
who it
So I
is.
said, that's where he's hearing my, because I kept saying, how's he hearing my stuff like this, right? Because some of the stuff wasn't released that I'm hearing. I'm like, wait a minute, how's he hearing it? Then I said, oh, okay, he had a baby by so-and-so, and that's the one I was doing my tracks on. So that's where he was hearing my stuff. I said, okay. But going back to the 1990 album, what happened was some of my songs that weren't released in 86 were still in the archive. And I got signed originally to Warner Brothers through Benny Medina.
Oh
And
yeah, Benny Medina. For those of
yeah,
you who don't know who Benny Medina is, Benny Medina, his life allegedly is the inspiration for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
yes.
So I'm saying allegedly because I'm hearing other things, but I'm
Well,
we're gonna keep it
well,
we're gonna keep it
I'm
a
gonna put,
buck. We're gonna
I'm
keep
gonna
it a
put,
buck up on here. So
I'm gonna
that's what I'm gonna
put,
say allegedly.
yeah, I'll put a little log on that though. Here's a log to add to that fire. He did stay with the Gordy family, who was
Right.
in Bel Air, and
Hmm.
also he was one of the artists on Motown, which was the group
Yes.
called Apollo. The group called
Apollo,
Apollo,
it's your
and
duty to shake your booty. Look it up on YouTube. I am not, am I
that's it.
lying, D?
That's it. No, you're not lying. So
I'm
this
not
is the
lying.
thing. So Benny um, had gotten blessed to get the job over at Warner Brothers, and he was one of the big guys over there. He was this guy that had the power to sign, and he and I had met. Oh, I got to go back a few steps. I'm sorry. I'm going out of context.
Mhm.
How Benny heard about me in the first place was a few years prior. Um, I was on Different Strokes with Janet Jackson. This was in what 1982, I believe.
Keep talking. I
And
hear you.
I was on Different Strokes playing bass, and this is when Janet and Todd were singing, and we were doing the whole Ebony and Ivory thing. And it was funny because Benny had heard me singing on the set. Him and Kerry Gordy, who was playing piano on the show,
And he was a part of
and
Apollo too.
yeah, they were. He was the keyboard player for Apollo, but they were also producing, and they were producing songs on Jermaine Jackson and a whole bunch of other artists. So what ended up happening was they heard me singing backstage and asked me would I come to a recording session at Motown, and this was in 1982, mind you.
Mm.
So I went over to the studio and I brought my aunt with me because at the time I didn't have a car and she was available. I said, "Would you take me to the session at Motown?" And she's an awesome singer, and that's Audrey Madison,
Hmm.
Art's sister. So
I'm telling
um,
you, y'all, we might be related. And for
I'm
hold
telling you,
up for 1 second, for those of you who are coming into the room, my guest today is singer, songwriter, producer, and my friend for 30 plus years,
right.
Sullivan. Okay, let's go.
Well, the blessing for me, like I said, was my aunt took me over to the session at Motown, and we ended up singing background on a track. And they told us it was for a different artist, but later on it came out on Jermaine Jackson. And we didn't get no credit, no money, no nothing. But I was like, wow. So here we are all over the radio. My voice is being heard. I'm singing ad libs on this song. And I'm like, man, I ain't get nothing for that. So the blessing was Benny was one of the producers on the track. So a couple of years later, I was in search of a deal. And he heard I was looking. So he said, bring him to Warner Brothers. So I had a meeting with Warner Brothers. And at the time, I was talking with MCA.
Mm-hmm.
And Gerald Busby and I had a meeting, and I was trying to put a group together because I thought I was still signed to the Calista label, and I didn't realize my release had come through, and I was free agent.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was trying to get another deal. And at this time, I was, struggling because I was really trying to get people to hear my music, and people were starting to, say, well, hey, man, they're looking for your sound, man. They want that sound out there. And I was trying my best to get, hooked up with somebody so I could release these records. What ended up happening was,
Someone just said, I didn't make money in music until D showed me how to get down. That's the real Rick Stone. Hi, Rick.
much love, Rick. That's my cousin Rick. Now check this out. Rick is also one of our cousins. And if we're related, Miss Linda, that's one of your cousins. What happened was Rick used to be one of the hottest DJs. Let me let you know, one of the baddest pop lockers in the world, and one of the bad DJs in LA. He used to, work at the Red
What?
Onion down on Wilshire and a whole bunch of
I
other clubs.
remember I
Vince
remember the
had,
red
man.
onion on Wilshire. I remember.
But Rick, oh my God, Rick Stone is one of the baddest rap. He could pop lock, he could DJ, he was all the stuff. So he wasn't really a musician, but he loved music, and he could play. Like if he did your party was turned up.
It was gonna
Okay,
be
so
lit.
what happened was he told me he had an interest in doing music, and I said, well, what are you trying to do? He said, well, man, I want to learn how to play keyboards. So I had a synthesizer I used to keep around at all times, and I said, well, let me show you a few chords. Showed him a few chords. Before I knew it, he was playing his ass off. I'm like, this guy. So now he's producing. Now, mind you, this is later, but now he's writing and producing for people too. And he has kids that they're not even kids no more. They just become young adults. So I got to give them love. His kids are so bad. But Rick was a DJ at the Bitten Apple, Paradise 24, and all
I
these
remember
different
Paradise
places like I was
24.
mentioning. And
Icon
he's also
Entertainment.
right. Well, he was one of the DJs. Well, check this out. Okay. Now he's teasing me. He still has one of my keyboards. I did a song on a group called BBD, and the song was Poison. I wasn't the writer. I'm the guy who did the remix. I want to make this clear so everybody know. I didn't write Poison. It was written by Spider-Man and Freeze. I was
You're
called to do
breaking
the
up. You're breaking up.
remix by Lil Silas. And
Yes.
what happened was I had this little synthesizer called a DX100, who actually Babyface gave me this keyboard. So
you're breaking up a little bit. You're breaking up a little bit, D.
After I did all these sessions and stuff, my cousin was like, man, I want that keyboard. So I gave him my DX100. So he was using that on his sessions. And now he's been using that still on his record that he uses. Somebody just came in.
Okay.
Somebody else just came in. What did you say? You're breaking up.
You're breaking up. Am I breaking up or are you breaking up? Oh, I lost. Okay, hold on.
Still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Just 1 minute. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. I gotta go. Yes. Can you hear me?
You still there?
Hold on. All right. We're back. Still here. Still here. I don't know. Here. Okay. Go out and come back in. Come back. Can you hear me? You can't hear me? Okay. All right, hold on. Let's go back. What's going on? All right, this is like technical. All right, let's go back. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You can't hear me? Okay, let's go out and come back in. I'm sorry, guys. We're just having so many technical difficulties today. Be right back. I'm gonna go out and come back in.